Hello, ladies, NBs, and gentlemen. This is a video on a concept called Between the Panels, which I first heard of in the movie Super. It's a line from that movie. It may have been mentioned before. I'm not aware, but it's a fascinating concept to me. And of course, it's the idea. Super is a movie. It's a bit of a strange movie if you haven't seen it. It's a movie I quite enjoyed all the same. But it's a bit strange, a bit dark, but a very interesting concept. Somewhat similar to Kick-Ass, the idea of real people actually trying to be superheroes. But there's obviously a lot of comic book references made in the movie, and the idea of between the panels is that there must be things that go on between the panels of a comic book. There must be certain things. We are never going to see someone's entire life through the life of a fictional character. We're never going to see it portrayed entirely with these panels. So we must have things going on between the panels. There must be events that go on between them. Most obvious example of that, when we're introduced to a superhero or any kind of comic book character, we're not usually introduced to them at the point of their birth. We're probably introduced to them as an adult. So there's a whole life that stretches back there that we don't get to see. And even in the case of, say, someone like Superman, who we may, depending on the canonicity, when we may see him as a baby, leaving Krypton or whatever, we don't necessarily see his entire life growing up. And then even if you get these various things like Superboy or Smallville, which I'm not something I've ever paid much attention to, again, you're still not going to see the whole thing. And this applies obviously to all kinds of fiction, not just to comic books. You could use the term between the chapters if you're talking about more regular kind of books. But it's fascinating to me that when we create a fictional character, we, without necessarily intending to, we by default have to have therefore created, or at least partially created, their parents. Because for the fictional character to have any kind of plausibility to us, they will have had to have parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and so on. They will have to have some kind of backstory. Otherwise, we can't really see their existence as plausible. And just because characters are fictional doesn't mean they don't have an existence of sorts. I think that's something I think we sometimes miss when we talk about like the real world and the fictional world. Is something that's fictional can still be discussed as though it's real. If someone asked you what happened in a TV show, you would tell them what happened as though it was real. You'd say, what happened in this TV show last night because I missed it. You say, well, this character, such and such a character, went to such and such a place. We wouldn't say the actor playing this character went to such and such a place. If we were talking about something like Doctor Who, for example, we would say, well, the Doctor and his companion, they got onto the TARDIS and went to this planet. Whatever. We wouldn't say an actor playing the Doctor, an actor playing his companion, walked into a BBC studio set that was made to look like a time machine, and then some special effects were implemented, and then they walked out into an area of North Wales which was supposed to represent some planet. We wouldn't describe it like that because that is not really getting into the fiction. And the person is not so simple that they need to be told this isn't real so explicitly. They can be told about this as though it's real, without us having any legitimate fear that they might actually think it is. So we can actually discuss fiction as though it's real, and we tend to do that. And as such, by extension, that we do have, when we create a character that we must have at least partially created their parents. I say partially because we haven't given them names or identities or jobs or occupations or ages or whatever, or appearances, although their appearance, assuming, they are probably going to look at least something like their child. So maybe we've partially created their appearance. But it's a fascinating concept to me that there's actually, there must be stuff that goes on between the panels, even though it doesn't actually go on because it's fictional. The implication is that there must be stuff going on between the panels, and we probably, without even trying to, probably do actually visualise this at least a bit. We do at least visualise a bit about what might go on between the panels. Someone who's a really enthusiastic fan, who might write fan fiction, they won't just look at this a bit. This is the actual fertile ground for them from which to grow their fan fiction. This is where they'll look and say, right, I'm going to write fiction. I'm going to write a bit of fan fiction that's set between this episode and this episode, or this book and this book, or this panel and this panel. I'm going to write a bit of fan fiction around that, so as because they personally, as a fan, feel that area is something they'd really like to see explored more. They would really like to see that bit of a gap in the story filled out. I mean, a really good example of this, and also a slightly bizarre one, was it was on the Blake 7 fan forum, and there is a for those who aren't familiar with Blake 7, there was an intergalactic war which took place between the end of the second season and the beginning of the third season, and the length of this war is kind of hard to determine. I think the idea originally was that it was just one massive battle that maybe lasted for about a day, but references to the war in episodes of the third and fourth season all tend to extend it out a lot longer, and do suggest it actually may have been a good couple of years long. And it's really difficult to tell. And this was the basis of a bizarrely heated argument on the forum, which the moderators eventually had to step into and calm it down. And for a while, all mention of this war was banned on the forum. and I think if anyone tried to mention it, one of the moderators just posted a picture of Basil Fawlty, just with the catchphrase, "Don't mention the Galactic War. I mentioned it once, but I think I got away with it." And I thought it was quite appropriate. But that's like an example of that. There's something between the panels there. There's this thing, and people can't agree on what it is, but it's implied because of things that are mentioned in the panels. It's implied that such and such a thing happened. That it's implied here that it was a few years long, or it's implied here that it was a short time. It was only, and people, of course, can build. There is like fertile ground there for people to write fan fiction if they want to write. Potentially, if it was a years long war, there's potential for like an extra season worth of fan fiction you could just slot right in there between the second and third season. But how does this can also apply to real life, though? I think the idea of between the panels, biopics, for example, biographies and things like that. If someone's writing your biography, they're going to write about the things that they think readers will want to read about. Same if they're making a biopic, they're going to show you the things as the viewer that they think you want to see. They're not going to give you an excess of mundane detail, all these sort of mundane aspects of this person's life. They're going to give you things like, if it's a famous thing, the one I remember, I've watched Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash biopic. I mean, that gives us the drama from his life. Things like the breakup of his marriage, his relationship with June Carter. It also gives us, plenty of shots of him playing music, because he was a musician. It's not going to give us a huge amount of the mundane. But it might not just be the mundane that these people try to leave out. If you were an autobiographer, you might leave out things that you didn't want people to know about. There's a scene in Dazed and Confused, the movie, where one of the characters is nursing a bloody nose from having just been in a brawl and not coming out of it very well. And he tries to rationalise this to himself. He says, if they ever write a biography about me, they probably won't mention this. Or if they do, they'll just mention I got into a brawl. They won't say who won. And I think maybe that's something if you were an autobiography, you might deliberately do. You would leave out the more embarrassing aspects of your life and hope they just disappear between the panels, so that when your life is documented, this kind of this book that's immortalizing you long after your death, this book is still going to be what's left, and where people go if they want to access your life. You can nicely sort of edit out the more embarrassing aspects, or the things you'd rather not want people to know about. I think on the internet, certainly on places like YouTube and Facebook, we kind of do that. Because YouTube videos are a bit like panels. People upload these things, but that's all we see of them, unless we know them offline. We're just seeing these snippets. They could be like 5-minute videos, 10-minute videos, even if they're like an hour-long video or something. That's still just a snippet of someone's life that they've uploaded. And I always think someone who let's say if they upload videos where they're always angry. They're always angry, but that's all we see of them on video. What are they like between the panels? Are they actually a lot more mellow, a lot happier? Same with people who are always happy. People who upload videos where they always seem to be happy and in a cheery mood. I mean, what sort of emotions do they have when they're not uploading videos, when they're between the panels? And it's similar with Facebook. Facebook, I think, some people's lives look amazing when you look at Facebook. You just see the scrolling of these images of them out having fun and partying and everything, and that's all they ever seem to upload. And you think, but what are they not uploading? What are all the mundane, crappy, boring, less than brilliant parts of their life? Those are the things that actually don't get uploaded, I think. But yeah, those are just some thoughts there about that. If you don't find this concept as fascinating as me, I'm gonna be so bold as to say I don't know if you can appreciate fiction on quite the same level that I can. Thanks for watching. Bye.